Magic of Singapore Airlines is book the cook service. The lie flat seats, these are very comfortable. So today I'm trying to get to Hong Kong, but there's not a lot of award availability on Singapore, Hong Kong. A good alternative option is to look for a flight to Guangzhou instead, because, fair bit more space. And a lot of airlines also serve Guangzhou, so Singapore Airlines today, but also, Etihad, Qatar Airways, quite a few of the global airlines. You might need a China visa to go from Guangzhou to Hong Kong. It's about a 30-minute high-speed train ride, but you might also not need one if you're a national of one of many eligible countries. You get to actually transit for 144 hours visa-free. So, quick tip for you if you're going to Hong Kong, and that's why I'm on the Singapore Airlines A350 flight to Guangzhou. In terms of the flight so far, I've been super impressed. Singapore Airlines is always a good experience to fly, and this is my first time on the A350 in the regional configuration. These seats are pretty much the same as the Boeing Dreamliners that Singapore Airlines has as well, and I find them basically the perfect seat for a regional flight because anything from 3 to 6 hours, having a lie flat bed and having so many bells and whistles and a good deal of privacy here in the window seats as well. It's a real blessing. And of course, I'm looking forward to the breakfast that's about to be served. If you're familiar with Singapore Airlines, you'll know that you can pre-order some very special meals, and that's exactly what I've done. All right, so here is the magic of Singapore Airlines' book the cook service. Yet again, I've ordered for myself the fishball char kway teow soup. Now, char kway teow is like the Southeast Asian term for these rice noodles, but if you guys have been watching this channel for a while, you'll know that I'm basically obsessed with this stuff, and I'll eat it at every available opportunity, especially on a plane. So I've taken a seat here in the seat behind me to chat with you a little bit and share a little bit of a story. So let's sit down with a cup of Milo. Milo, if you're not familiar, it's a malted chocolate drink, popular in this part of the world. So good. And I'll tell you a little bit about the different experiences, the first time, the second time, and the remaining times that you visit a given place. And the reason I've been reflecting upon this is I just came from Singapore, spent a few days there, and Singapore is a great city. It was my maybe fourth or fifth or sixth time in Singapore over the course of my life, and I was reflecting a little bit upon the experience when it's a city that you've been to multiple times, a city you know relatively well, and how that varies from the first or second time you go to a place. So the way I think about it, first time you go somewhere, it's basically the very definition of a novel experience, right? In every way. I can certainly recall the many first times that I visited a place and how captivated and enraptured I was by the sheer novelty of the culture, of the different way of life, the way that the buildings look, right? The way that the streets are lined up if you're used to the narrower streets from back home. So that's just one example. But the whole point is, I think back to all of my travels, and the first time I've gone somewhere has always been such a unique, special, like boundary pushing, like feels like I'm overcoming my fears, I'm expanding my horizons, I'm getting that dopamine from travel, right? From seeing a place for the first time and being filled with amazement and wonder from that first time experience. Now, the interesting thing is when it's your second time going to a place, it's almost like a completely different experience than your first time, even though it's the same place. If I think back to all of the second time visits I've made to a given place, somewhere like Bali, Indonesia, right? I've been twice in my life, and the second time was a different experience. But even something as close to home as, Seattle. Seattle's a place I've been 3 times. Once I've formed an identity as a traveler, that was one of my first second time visits to a place. And I recall having the feeling, and it's been reinforced over the years, the first time you go somewhere and you exit the airport, you're trying to figure out how to get from the airport into the city, do the major touristy things, but you're still exploring, making a mental map of the place, and experiencing it as a first time visitor. The second time, you draw from those experiences and you have a lot more of a sense of comfort and familiarity and knowing what you're doing in a place, right? You have a little bit of what all the locals have, which is an existing lay of the land. You already know the context of your location within the wider city or destination. And whatever you're in town for, you already have a sense of how best to get there, what to do, what there is to do nearby, how you might plan out the rest of your day, and so on and so forth. I've become very convinced that to really get to know a place, it obviously takes many visits, but your second visit to a place is what really lets you start to get to know it at a deeper level. And it's worth pursuing that second time visit experience for places that you've been to the first time and have been a huge fan of, because it's going to be a completely different experience as a traveler, and different angle, different set of new perspectives that you get to add to your overall repertoire of perspectives that you've built over time. And then, of course, as a third, fourth, fifth time traveler, right, once you get to visiting a place for multiple times and making it part of your routine as a traveler, a place that you know in your heart that you'll be returning to multiple times in your life, that's an experience unto itself, right? You then develop slowly over time the level of comfort that a local has, and the level of keeping up with what's new since the last time you were here. You got your favorite haunts, right? Favorite small places that you as a multiple time visitor know about and take a certain amount of pride in knowing about, whereas a first time visitor might not get around to seeing that place. Things like hole-in-the-wall restaurants, bars, parks, museums, things to check out, places that are special to you. You've probably got some friends to meet up with who are based there or are there at the same time. You've got a network that you can potentially tap into. So that in itself is also a completely different experience than your first time going somewhere and your second time going somewhere. So the way I like to plan out my travels, and this is something that's kind of been built up spontaneously over time, but now I'm putting some definition around it. People keep asking me, like, how do you actually plan out the many trips that you take over the course of a year? And to me, I think subconsciously, I've always been looking to optimize for a good mix of first-time visits, second-time visits, and multiple repeat visits. So every year, I want to go to a place I've never been before, but I also want to go a place I've been once before, and so that I can rediscover it as that second-time visit. And I also want to go to, for me, it's the world's major cities that I like to keep going back to year after year. But as a global citizen, as somebody building a travel business, that's important to me. Let me know in the comments if this resonates, if you too have experienced the different types of highs, emotional highs of being a first time, second time, and multiple time traveler. There's about an hour of the flight left to go, so I'll probably sample some more beverages, maybe get some work done, or just listen to a podcast or something, and we'll be landing soon in Guangzhou. Now, one of the things I love the most about these intra-Asia flights is even on flights of 3 hours, 4 hours, sometimes even 1 or 2 hours, you've got such a nice product in terms of the actual seat in business class, or sometimes even first class. If this was North America or Europe, you're flying short haul or medium haul, with very few exceptions, you'll probably be seated upright, okay? It won't be very comfortable. At best, you'll have a recliner chair. Intra-Europe business class is famously the same as economy class, just with a middle seat blocked off. So really nothing to write home about. But in Asia, it's just, Singapore Airlines, they've got the lie flat seats. These are very comfortable for a short haul flight or a medium haul. Maybe a bit tight for a long haul, but certainly not complaining on this 3.5 hour hop. And, you've got all the other airlines too. Eva Air, Cathay Pacific, Thai. They've all got lie flat seats in business, and hopping around the region, like, this is the standard. So obviously cost-wise, you've got the option of low-cost carriers as well if you're on more of a budget. But if you've got points to use on premium cabins, intra-Asia experience is really nice. And oftentimes it's really good value as well. We've just landed in Guangzhou now, and if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed our chat earlier, you'll definitely want to check out another video I made where I talk more about my travel philosophy, how I optimize my trips, what I'm looking for when I travel. That was filmed on board Lufthansa First Class. You'll definitely want to watch that video. I'll see you over there.